Hi students, today what we're going to do is a soil test. So if you recall, last week I collected a sample of soil from the garden bed where we're going to be growing the potatoes, and this is what the soil looks like now. It's really dried out, and Aubrey and I have been crushing it to get it all nice and powdered up. So it's ready to test, and what we're going to test for today is pH. So you've probably learned about pH in physical science or some of the other classes you've taken for science, but what pH is, it's a measurement of how acidic or how basic a substance is. And what soil pH does is it affects the way plants absorb nutrients that are present in the soil. So for example, your soil could have a high amount of nitrogen, or it could have a high amount of phosphorus or potassium, but if the pH is not in the right range, it's kind of like putting a huge amount of food in front of that plant and then not allowing it to eat that food. Because what the pH does is it affects how the roots can absorb the nutrients. It affects how dissolved or how not dissolved those nutrients are. Soils that have a very low pH, they dissolve the nutrients to a high degree because that's what acids do. Acids dissolve things. pH that's more neutral or actually slightly alkaline will not dissolve those nutrients as much. So you can see how knowing your nutrient level in your soil and putting fertilizer on your soil is really good, but if your pH is wrong, all the fertilizer in the world, all the Miracle-Gro or all the, like commercial brand fertilizer that you use in the world is not going to make a difference because the pH affects how the plant can absorb those nutrients. And plants like different types of pH. So potatoes like a more acidic soil. They like it between 4.8 and 5.4. And peas, spinach, and lettuce, which we started in the raised beds, they like it between 6.0 and 8.0. So they definitely like more of a neutral soil, whereas potatoes like more of an acidic soil. So acid-loving plants are things that like those acidic soils. Evergreen trees, mountain trees, like trees that would grow higher up on hillsides like oaks and chestnuts and laurels. Some of our kind of like shrub plants like raspberries, blueberries, peanuts, they like acidic soils. So do carrots. So do potatoes. Now to get our soil to have a lower pH, we have to add either gypsum or aluminum sulfate to that soil to bring the pH down. Now our soil-loving plants that are our plants that love slightly acidic or more neutral type soils, most of our vegetables not listed over here. Some of your common ones like squash, herbs, tomatoes, pumpkins. You're going to also see most of our commonly grown field crops like soy, corn, wheat, alfalfa, red clover, things that we would grow around here in Ohio are going to be in this range. They're going to like their soils mostly between 6.0 and 7.0, and to get it to that level we have to add lime. That's going to bring the soil pH up if it's too low. Now lime is something you might have seen on fields. If you've ever driven by a farm field and you've seen a bunch of powdery white substance on the field and you've thought, what in the world? Why would somebody have snow on their field right now? That's probably lime that you saw, and that gets worked into the soil to bring the pH up. All right, so what we're going to do today with our soil that's for potatoes is we're going to measure the pH. So to start with, our instructions here in our pH kit tell us to to fill our test tube to the fourth line with our indicator. So that's what this is right here. And this is a test kit that you can order online. It's from a company called Lamont, and it's a really easy home soil test kit that you can do for your garden soil. All right, so we've got it lifted up or filled up to line 4. Now it says we have to add 3 of these small 0.5 gram scoops of our soil, and you want to have the finest soil that you can so that you don't have a bunch of big chunks in your soil. Okay, so we're going to pour 1, 2, 3 scoops into our test tube. And then we're going to cap this and shake it for 1 minute. All right, so again, we're going to just shake this back and forth, trying to get that soil mixed in. And then after we shake it for 1 minute, we are to let the soil test tube sit and rest. And then we're going to measure the color of the liquid that rises up above the soil with this chart. So we're going to come back here in a little bit and we're going to measure the color of our pH of our soil with this chart. So we'll show you in just a little bit what the results are, okay?
Go.
Okay, so while we wait for our soil pH test to work out here, we're going to take a look over here at the rest of the tests we have for our soil today, which are all tests to measure the nutrient levels in the soil. So what we've got here are tests for potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and those are called the macronutrients. Now, macro is Latin for large, so these are the nutrients needed in large amounts by plants. So the first test we're going to do is potassium, and I've already filled this test tube up with our extracting solution. And what we're going to do is we're going to add 4 scoops of our ground up soil here to this test tube, and then we're going to shake this for 1 minute to extract the potassium out of the soil. So the first step on all of these tests is to extract the nutrient out of the soil, and then that way you can then measure how much you need. Now this is the one for nitrogen, and this one only needs 2 scoops of our soil. So a couple of the reasons why the soil tests are important, it can help you to determine how much your soil might be lacking in nutrients, and that can then give you a guide as to what type of fertilizer you would need to put on your soil to give your plants the nutrients that they need. So because these are the macronutrients, they are actually listed as numbers on the front of fertilizer packages. So they are listed as 3 numbers that are separated by a dash. So for example, a Miracle-Gro fertilizer is 20-20-20, and what that means is that Miracle-Gro has 20% nitrogen, 20% phosphorus, and 20% potassium. Those 3 numbers are always listed in that same order on every bag of fertilizer. It's always nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So if we do our soil test and we find out that our nitrogen level is low, but our potassium and our phosphorus levels are high, we don't need to go and spend money on fertilizer that has a lot of phosphorus and potassium, do we? That would just be a waste of our money, and it would be actually putting excess nutrients in the soil that the plants don't need. So we would only go and look for something that has a high first number on the fertilizer bag. So if we need something with nitrogen in it, we would look for something that's maybe a 20-00 or a 20-55, for example. So it helps you to know what type of fertilizer is needed for your plants. Another nice thing that this does is it